is responsible for handling all student billing. They handle payment processing, funds, and other student transactions. Student accounting, they also manage WebStack, which is the portal students access to view their billing. They go to WebStack to take a look at their account activity. This is where they go when they want to add BareBox and even make changes to their personal information. Using WebStack, students can add parents or other individuals to view and pay their bill. To do this, they would simply go to WebStack, they would click on billing and BareBox, then they would click on pay view, and then students will be directed to add another payer. And then once that transaction is completed, parents and other authorized users are added as a guest, and an email will be sent to the parent, and their user ID and temporary password will be sent to them as well. So if we could go back one slide, please. Just want to emphasize here that parents and authorized users can also access their students' billing through the Cashnet system. Cashnet is a 100% paperless product. The university is a paperless environment, so we're allowing students and families to take a look at all of their student activity and their billing statements through this online portal. So each semester, student accounting will bill for tuition, fees, room and board. So the fall semester bill has already been released. That was released on July 1st, and that has a payment due date of August 20th. You can also plan to expect to get your spring bill on December 1st, and that's going to have a payment due date of January 20th for next year. So after the statements go out for the semester, if there is an unpaid balance for the student, what's going to happen is they're going to begin to receive a monthly statement anytime there's an unpaid balance. And if there is an unpaid balance, then there will be a late fee assessed. That late fee will be 2% of that balance. So just want to make sure that families are aware of that. You will get a semester's statement, but for any unpaid balances, you're going to continue to get those on a monthly basis. The other thing that will happen too is as transactions are processed for a student account, students will also be able to take a look at all the transactional activity that's happening on their account. They can get that obviously through their billing, but they also can view this information through their WebStack account. Also, I would like to point out that all enrolled students have received a student health insurance charge of $1,942. Every student has this on their bill. But students can waive out of this charge. They simply would need to go through WebStack, and then there's a link to a waiver form. The form basically consists of a series of questions that are used by student health to determine if the student's current insurance plan will adequately cover them over the school year. So the university will get those responses, review the information, and if they approve the request, then the insurance premium that's on the student's bill will be removed. But if the request is denied, the student will be required to keep the university plan, and that charge will remain on their account. So it's real important to know what that deadline is, because there's no need for you to have a charge or an expense on the student account if you can avoid it. So I would encourage you all to go ahead and get those submitted, those waiver requests submitted. The deadline to do so is September 5th. The link will be open up until the 5th, but they're very strict. So if it's after the 5th, it's going to be pretty difficult to get anybody to really approve a late waiver submission at that point. If you have questions about the student health insurance plan through the university, or questions about this waiver process, please feel free to reach out to the Habit Health and Wellness Center. We provide families with several options for covering their students' cost. One of the popular options that families choose is the installment payment plan, and that's also administered through Cashnet. This is a plan that allows families to spread all or just a part of their semester's expenses into convenient monthly payments. So you need to enroll. So the enrollment can happen. You can, enroll for the fall semester only, or you can enroll for the spring semester only, or you can enroll for both semesters. The thing to remember there is that it is an interest-free plan, but there is a $40 enrollment fee that you would have to pay each time you enroll for each semester. Another option is the PEP program offering that I mentioned earlier. And under this program, families can choose among several types of payment options. The first one is the multi-year plan, and that honestly is the most popular one. This allows families to borrow one initial amount at the start of their student's first year of college. They can borrow 2 years, 3 years, all the way up to 4 years worth of their students' tuition, fees, room and board. If they decide that they don't want to borrow for all of those costs, they can borrow for housing only, for tuition only. So you have some flexibility there in what you want to borrow for. The beauty of this plan is that it allows you to freeze the portion that you've borrowed under the program. You get to freeze that portion that's covered under the PEP. And so you're sheltered from any future increases at that particular percentage for the future. So it's basically you're locking in at a first year rate if you're borrowing over multiple years. The next option is called the prepay option. And that allows you to prepay all or just a part of your students' tuition, fees, room and board. And this is all happening without borrowing. So you can prepay, again, up to 1, 2, 3, all 4 years of cost. Again, the beauty of this plan is that it allows you to freeze your portion of whatever your prepaid amounts are. You're able to lock it in and freeze at the first year rate. The next option is called the combination option. And this allows you to do both. So you can do a prepay or a lump sum portion of charges under that program, but then you can borrow the remaining amount. This option really works well for parents who have accumulated some savings to cover some or most of their students' expenses, but they would still need to borrow to cover the remaining amount. And so there's flexibility to prepay, provide the university with a lump sum amount, lock in on that, and then borrow the rest. So again, a wonderful way to lock in to basically shelter you from future cost increases. And lastly, you can borrow 1 year at a time. If you choose not to go with any of those options that I've just described, you can do this on a year-by-year basis. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Many families do. And so if that's what you would prefer to do, at least maybe even to try it out for the first year, borrow an amount, that would be under the annual option. And that would probably be the best choice that you'd want to go with to start. And so those are the programs through the university's private program, the PEP program. But if you decide that you don't necessarily want to try that out, you've got experience borrowing through the federal government, and that's something that you're more comfortable with. And certainly that is also an option that you can consider. And so you can borrow through the federal government, through the Department of Ed, by applying for a Federal Plus loan. So overall, I encourage you to visit the payment and financing options sections of our website, which is financialaid.wustl.edu. Take a look at the descriptions of each of the options that I've talked about. You can create a personalized worksheet. That worksheet is called the Financial Planning Comparison Worksheet, which calculates multiple options for you. I find it to be a very helpful tool. It's a tool that I use when I'm counseling with families because it's personalized, and the personalization is based on the information that you input about your personal savings, your students' specific financial aid award, how much money you're comfortable borrowing. So once that information is input, what happens is it helps to lay out details of all of the payment options and financing options that I've just described. But all of that information is on one sheet. And by it being on one sheet, it will allow you to do a side-by-side comparison of all the options that I've just described. When you see that information side by side, you're better able to make an informed decision, and the best decision that's for you and your family. We have a new video that we've just created to help families out because this process can seem a bit overwhelming, but there is a video that we've created that walks you through step by step this process. And I encourage all of you all to go out to the website and take a look at that if you're interested. So for students who are federal work study eligible and they are ready to begin working as soon as they hit campus, we want to make sure that you are prepared. And the best way to be prepared is to make sure that you bring your original, emphasis on original, I-9 documents to campus this fall. We have a new process in place that we rolled out this year, and that we're working with the Career Center very closely this year in utilizing the platform that they have called CareerLink. So students would need to go into CareerLink, set up an account, set up a profile. And using this information, our employers would then go out, take a look at the student data, student information. Students will also have an opportunity to research open jobs, take a look at those listings, and reach out to employers who express their interest in any jobs that they've identified that they would like. And so the two parties will dialogue back and forth together and reach an agreement on if the student is interested in starting work. They will have a discussion in terms of start date, start time. The employer will also confirm what the student's hourly rate or their wage would be, and so on. So we think it's a good idea for students to go out there now, start researching, get a jump start on it, and then identify jobs. And certainly by the first week of classes, reach out to employers and let them know if you've identified a position that you're interested in. Now, because you are considered an employee of WashU as a federal work study student, you will need to follow the same process that I did, that all of us did when we got hired on at the university. What this means is that you'll need to, again, complete the I-9 form and provide original documents. And I keep emphasizing that because it's really important. You're going to be leaving home, many of you traveling many miles to get to WashU's campus. So again, if you're very serious about working very early in the fall semester, bring the paperwork with you. You will not be able to start without it because this is the university's way to stay in compliance federally because this information is used to confirm your identity and legal authorization to work as a paid employee in the United States. Some examples of documents that are accepted are the passport, your driver's license, a social security card, copy of, well, not copy, but a certified copy of your birth certificate, things like that. Students who are not eligible to work for work study technically can still find employment. There are plenty of job opportunities available for non-work study students. You would go through the same process. You would go to CareerLink, set up an account, but also the important thing to remember is that you too would be responsible for submitting your I-9 documentation as well. Now, we strongly encourage students to seek outside scholarships because there really is no downside for doing it. We do not penalize students for bringing in a scholarship from the outside. It does not mean that we automatically will reduce your WashU scholarship, which honestly, reduction of scholarships is a common practice among our other universities, but it's not something that we do at WashU. We would simply add the outside scholarship to your student's award. The key there is as long as the additional outside scholarship in combination with your current financial aid award, as long as the combination of these two do not exceed the total cost of attendance, then you're golden. The only time we ever make reductions is when the combination of those two amounts do exceed the cost of attendance. We are required by the federal government to make sure that we do not have awards that go above cost of attendance. So it's really a compliance issue for us. It's not us, it's really the government. But I just want to mention that, if that ever happens, which doesn't happen often, that's the reason why. Students that might already have an outside check in their possession and they just don't know what to do with it, please, mail the check to the SFS office. If you're on campus, you can drop the check off to our office. We actually also have a drop box. If you're not, interested in coming directly into our office, which is fine. We have a drop box that you can just simply slip the scholarship check to. Or if you haven't received the money, but you're anticipating that you will be receiving a check sometime over the fall semester, have the scholarship committee mail the check directly to us. We also have accepted funds electronically. And if the scholarship organization wants to remit the scholarship funds to us electronically, reach out to our office. We're happy to provide the direct deposit or transfer instructions to you so that you can then pass that on to the scholarship organization. So it's all very easy. So I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone of our commitment to make WashU affordable for families. We are committed to meeting 100% of demonstrated need for all of our admitted students. Students with a family income of $75,000 or less will have their full need met with scholarships, grants, and federal work study, no loans. These students and those that qualify for Pell Grant will also receive additional grant money to cover their transition to WashU as a first-year student. These funds can be used to assist with purchasing books, supplies. Funds can also be used to, cover the cost for setting up your dorm room for the first time. The choice is yours. I'll also mention that any student who is receiving $1 or more of need-based aid from our office, they're also going to be receiving a technology grant. And so there's grant money that has been set aside for students who are receiving financial aid to help them purchase new laptops. There is more information that will be coming very soon with instructions and action steps that students will need to take to secure those additional grant dollars, and also instructions on how they will go about making their purchases to get their new laptops. So watch your email, look for additional information to come literally in the next few days. And then finally, WashU increases aid for family financial circumstances that change. And I really do want to remind folks of that. We know that things happen all the time, situations change. And so to make the process as simple and as stress-free as we can, we have a form that's on our website. It's called the Financial Aid Award Reconsideration Form. And this is a form that you can, download, fill out, submit, and get that into our office. Certainly you can reach out to your SFS counselor and share what your family circumstances are that have changed. But if you want to get the process started very easily to know exactly what information we're looking for, we're happy to provide you this information through a form. Basically, it'll be just a narration of what's happened. There may be questions in terms of providing us with additional income as far as what has changed on the income or asset side. So there's financial things that we would also ask for you to provide to us. But again, the process is pretty straightforward. You would then submit that form and then your SFS counselor would get it, would take the information, review it, and there's an appeal committee that meets weekly, and we would all review the information and then come back with a decision. So I say all that to say that we're always happy and willing to work with families to reevaluate and see if there are additional ways that we can secure additional funds for your student if needed. And if you have questions about your award or you have questions about the payment and financing options that I've shared, again, if your family is experiencing any financial challenges, especially if you're being impacted by the pandemic still, we certainly do want to hear from you. And so we encourage you to reach out to your SFS counselor to share those updates. And then here's a list of all of our counselors and their contact information. You can also find out who your assigned counselor is by logging into NetPartner and pulling up your student's profile. Your counselor's picture and their contact information will appear. And so you would be able to get that information and reach out to them at any time. You can also set up an appointment. Our website also has appointment setting. There's a calendar feature there, and you can just, submit that and get on that counselor's calendar automatically. We also allow families to speak with a counselor that's on duty. We have a Zoom room that we have set up. And so there's always a counselor on duty between the hours of 10 and 4 Central Time, waiting in the Zoom room, waiting to speak to students and families. So there are multiple ways that you can reach out to our office to speak to your counselor and get any questions addressed. So with that, I am going to now turn it back over to Reggie.
Thank you, Andrea, so much for sharing all of this information. I have an initial question that I know many families may be wondering. Will parents or designated family members get a reminder email or an alert when tuition bills may be due?
Well, the only reminders that are sent out from student accounting happen if no one has opened their billing statement. So if there's a student or an authorized person who has received access to a bill, but no one's taken the time to open for, I guess, various reasons, open the statement, then a reminder is sent. But other than that, there aren't reminders alerting people to, hey, the payment is due. Unfortunately, that feature does not exist right now.
Thank you so much. Family members, we will now move on to the remainder of our question and answer portion of the webinar. As a reminder, please submit your questions via the Q&A feature below. Andrea, our first question, are electronic fund transfers acceptable? I know you may have mentioned this a little bit earlier. And then if so, where can we find the routing number and other details that are needed?
So we do accept electronic payments, and the banking instructions, the best place to go to get that information is through the student accounting website, They have all the details of how payments can be made. They also have information on where you can even mail a check to make a payment. So the best resource to get those questions answered is the student accounting website.
What options does Student Financial Services have available for families whose financial situations may change during the year due to unforeseen circumstances? Can you work with SFS throughout the year for support?
Right, you absolutely can. And I'll just mention again that the best way to have our office take into consideration changes or unforeseen circumstances is to, submit an appeal request. And again, you can use the award reconsideration form that I mentioned a minute ago. You can talk to your SFS counselor. And even if you miss talking to your assigned counselor, as I said before, we always have someone on duty. You can work with that person and get the process started there. But things happen. And, we also work with students and families throughout the 4 years that they're with us. So while things might look one way when a student enters a WashU, we know things can change on a dime in another year or even in the student's senior year. And so our goal is definitely to see that student all the way through. And if there's a way for us to provide assistance from the financial aid side to make that happen, then we're happy to do that.
So you had mentioned a little bit about the technology grant. Are there other resources available for students who need help purchasing things such as books or other essential academic items beyond technology?
So there are multiple sources. There are multiple offices, resources outside of Student Financial Services that can help students. One office that really comes to mind is the Office for Student Success. They are a wonderful resource because they're able to offer grants and emergency funding for students for various reasons. In financial aid, we're kind of restricted because we have to, award money within, certain limitations. And those limitations are, what are the things that are needed for a student to be able to get an education, books, supplies, obviously tuition, room and board. It gets a little tricky when there are costs or expenses or things that students need outside of that realm. And so that's where our partners, such as the Office for Student Success, come into play, because, sometimes students might need or want to, get assistance for a special program, professional development program that they're interested in. Well, that's out of the cost of attendance. And so that really couldn't be anything that's funded from our office. But an office like Office for Student Success, or maybe even the school that the student is studying in, sometimes there are resources, funding that's set aside within their respective divisions that would also help students out. So I think the first thing that I would do if I were a student who's not really sure how to navigate all of that, because it's a lot to navigate, start with your counselor. Your counselor is very well versed. They know who the players are. They've got the resources, the connections, they've got the network. And so they can help guide students as to where the best resources are to, help them meet whatever the need is in the moment.
Thank you so much. We have some families wondering, are there any additional scholarships that students can apply to during their 4 years beyond their first year?
I really get this question a lot, and I really don't ever enjoy the answer that I have to give, but I will give it again. And that's to say that we do not provide additional scholarship, merit scholarships outside of, what the student gets through our office. So if a student is receiving a merit scholarship in their first year, that merit scholarship is renewed. If they're receiving need-based financial aid scholarship, they're going to get that again, as long as they continue to submit their FAFSA year after year. But any monies outside of that, unfortunately, the university just doesn't provide.
Related to your answer just now, does a student need to reapply for their financial aid every year?
Yes, they do. So the renewal process only requires the FAFSA going forward. So the FAFSA would need to get submitted. We actually have 2 deadlines for students to submit their FAFSA for renewal. We have an early deadline, which is December 15th. And if students can get their FAFSAs into us by December 15th, then we can turn around their announcement or their notification about their award renewal by the end of January. If they don't get it in by December 15th, then they would need to wait, or they can get it in, but the deadline for that would be March 31st. And so those forms that have been received by March 31st, you won't get an answer back in terms of the award renewal until mid-May. So we have a lot of students that are getting their forms into us by December 15th, because it's so much better to know in January what your award renewal will look like. It's better to get that in January than having to wait all the way until May.
Andrea, we have some folks who are asking some additional questions regarding work study. Can you explain how the payment plan works for work study students?
Well, in terms of the payment plan, I am going to interpret that to mean, how do students get their funding? So we award $2,500 generally in a student's award for federal work study. And so students have to earn that, and they earn that and get it through a paycheck. So there are bi-weekly paychecks that students will receive for the hours worked. So no funds are ever credited to a student account. They will, get that through a paycheck. They can set themselves up for direct deposit, which we strongly encourage, or they'll get a physical check. 90% of our students are getting direct deposit, but that's how they get those funds. They get it through working and getting it through those paychecks.
Can you explain a little bit more about the Partners in Education with Parents, the PEP student loan format? We have some family members who are looking for some additional information about it.
Well, I will say this. So the PEP program is a parent-only program. So students do not get loans or any kind of funding through the PEP program. So the more information or the best information that I can share about PEP loans would be really to visit the website. There's a lot of detailed information about what those options are. And like I mentioned earlier, that financial planning comparison worksheet is the best tool to use because it will lay out for you how much, if you say you want to borrow X dollars, so it'll basically calculate for you what that monthly payment would be, what the interest would be, and what that monthly payment would be over a 10-year term. The terms are 10 years for all of the loans, I will mention that. But that planning comparison worksheet is the best thing out there. And I think that it's probably the best way for people to really understand what their options are. On the form will also be not only the PEP, but the federal loan that I mentioned earlier. You'll also have an opportunity to see, what your options are with the installment payment plan. So it just kind of lays everything out in one fell swoop for you. So I'm pushing it because I think it's really the best tool that we've got right now.
Andrea, you mentioned this a little bit earlier during your presentation, but we have some family members who are looking for clarification. Are all students assigned an SFS counselor, or is it only for students receiving financial aid?
So all students, all enrolled students have an SFS counselor assigned to them. So that's basically it. Yes. Every student has an SFS counselor that they're assigned to. So yeah, if for whatever reason a student is not receiving aid, and this does happen right now, maybe the student doesn't even have a need to receive financial aid, but again, things change. And so if the student never signs into Net Partner, they're not sure who to speak to, all they would need to do is to call our service center. We have a wonderful service center. And it's staffed by representatives that are on call. We have an inbound line, and all they do all day long is answer calls, emails. That's another way to get in touch with our office. And so you would just need to, as the student or even the parent, say, hey, this is my student, share the student's name, share the student's ID, and then we can tell you who your SFS assigned counselor is, and then we will have that person reach out to your student.
For our work study students, how much do they make per hour, or is it dependent on their job? Additionally, can they select their hours for work study, or again, is this dependent on the individual job?
Yeah, so the pay does depend on the job, but I will say that all jobs will pay a minimum of the minimum wage. So I can't really in this moment tell you, what job pays what, but I can tell you that at a minimum, everyone's going to make that wage. Generally speaking, most of our students are working between 8 and 10 hours each week. And in terms of the work schedule and those hours, who's setting it, that's really a conversation between the student and the employer. And so during the presentation, I mentioned that it's going to be real important for the student to reach out to the employer and have that conversation. That way, both parties have a really good understanding of what the expectations are. And if the student hears that maybe an employer is looking for them to work a few more hours every week, but they know their workload, they know what they've got on their plate, and it might sound like it's a bit too much, then maybe that's an opportunity the student may want to pass on and maybe go and seek out another opportunity where there's less hours that they would need to commit to. But I will say this, a lot of our employers are very flexible because they know students first, so they don't want students to jeopardize their academic success. And so, yeah, there's flexibility, I'm sure there, but for the most part, I think, again, it's a conversation between the student and the employer as to what they land on and what those final hours will be.
Shifting gears a little bit, are students eligible for financial aid if they are taking summer classes?
Yes, students can receive financial aid. We usually have the summer class financial aid form. It's a separate form available on our website by the middle of February. And so students that at that point in the spring semester, if they're thinking about what they're going to do for summer, they can submit that form to our office. And what we'll do is we'll take that information and we'll calculate and determine for them how much they're eligible for. But the one caveat I have, though, is that the financial aid comes only in the form of student loans. And if it's a student who is eligible for Pell Grant, there will be a portion of that that will provide them in Pell Grant. But scholarships and grants are not provided for summer coursework.
Moving populations, will transfer students who have transferred to WashU from another institution have their former scholarships matched, or does this vary based on their financial situation?
So I will start that we do not technically match other students, or I'm sorry, other institutions' awards. So I just want to say that out the gate. But what we will do is work very closely with the student and their family to ensure that we have the most current and comprehensive information possible. So I kind of dig deep. I'm a detective, and I like to ask lots of questions, not to be nosy or anything, but I just want to make sure that I'm covering all bases, because my goal is to make sure that we're giving the student the largest we can. So what we do is work again closely with the student and the family to make sure that we have all the appropriate information. And then we'll calculate what we can based on that information and provide the student with the best possible award. And at that point, I'm assuming that we will match. It'll kind of happen on the back end, but we don't want out the gate to say, yep, we're going to match and not have all the relevant information that we need to make that happen.
Thank you. Is the student accounting website the same as the student financial services website?
No, it is not. The student accounting website is called Financial Services, and this is what trips people up a lot. Because if you just type in student financial services in Google, sometimes financial services will pop up. So I understand why it's confusing. So it is financial services, and our website is called Student Financial Services.
Family members, we will make sure that both of those are in the chat, so that way you can bookmark as you may need to.
Yes.
Andrea, what services do you provide in order to help students establish a budget or manage their money during their time here at WashU or beyond?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have a financial literacy section that's on our website that is constantly under construction and being updated. But what we have out there right now is guidance on how to set up a budget. We actually do have a budget worksheet that students can download. There's also tips on how students can manage credit cards and debt. Now, that's what's on the website, but what we also do as counselors, we work very closely with students to help them build out a budget or develop a spending plan. I've worked personally with lots of students in doing that, and especially for students, we hear from students who first years, they're getting refund checks. They don't necessarily know what to do or what is the best way to spend down this money, so we help them with that. Sometimes we hear from students who are upper class students who want to move off campus. And so now, they're getting this really big refund check, and now they're responsible for paying their living expenses, their rent, utilities, and all of that good stuff. And so we help them plan and budget out that spending because you get one lump sum. Don't go spending it all in one place, but to build out a plan to make sure that they're covering all their bases each and every single month. And then sometimes we hear from graduating seniors, and I personally work with a student who was considering 2 job offers. He lived on the East Coast and really was weighing, should I stay home with mom and dad, save my money and move out in a year? Or should I just go for it and get this really expensive apartment because I've been dying to live on my own? And so we weighed the pros and cons of both. And at the end of the day, the decision was made to stay at home with mom and dad, save his money. That way he knew that he was getting off to a really solid start with a nice amount of money saved in his bank account. So yeah, we work very closely with students in that regard.
Family members, whether it's the resources or the conversations, there's a lot of great learning opportunities that Student Financial Services is able to provide you all. So we can't recommend those highly enough. Andrea, if a student's outside scholarship gets to wash you after fall semester tuition is already paid for, will there be a reimbursement issue to the student, a credit save for next semester? Like what happens there?
Yeah. Well, you basically could do both. And so if the bill is basically paid, so the student has a zero balance, and we get the scholarship check, we add it in, and now there's a credit. The family can decide to keep that credit on the student account, and then that credit rolls over so that it helps to reduce costs for the next semester if we're talking the fall semester. So if there's a big credit at the end of fall, or a credit period at the end of the fall semester, you can have that credit roll over to spring to help offset those costs. What you would need to do is make sure that you reach out to student accounting and let them know that's what you want to do. Otherwise, they would likely process a refund, and that refund is going to go to the student. So if that's fine, that's great. But, parents, you may not necessarily want that. And so, yeah, I would make sure that you get in touch with student accounting right away and let them know what your preference is for how to handle that credit.
If outside scholarships exceed the annual cost of attendance for 1 year, can the university defer that portion of the award to the following year?
No. Yeah, there's no deferral like that that's in place, unfortunately, yeah.
Andrea, we're going to ask one last question for the evening.
Sure.
Thank you so much for the information that you've shared tonight. So this last question, what parting advice do you have for our parent and family members of new students as they navigate student financial services?
Well, if you haven't figured it out already, I think the best advice I can give is to first develop a relationship with your SFS counselor if you don't already have one. They are your greatest resource to help answer questions, provide guidance, especially if you're experiencing changes in your financial situation. So get to know your SFS counselor. Next, I would say pay very close attention to the emails that are coming out of the office. Oftentimes we're sending out emails to and making an important announcement, or maybe we need information. Both of those things could affect your student's award. So if you see an email coming from SFS, my advice is to open it immediately and respond immediately if we're asking for you to take some action. And then lastly, make sure that you and your student are also closely monitoring their account activity and the transactions that are showing up. The last thing that you want to do is to be surprised when you see that monthly bill or that next semester's bill, and there are all these charges or activities that are showing up. And it's oftentimes because of maybe a lockout charge. Maybe there's a student who got locked out several times during the semester, and there's a little ding here for that. There might be overdue library charges. So all those miscellaneous ancillary charges that might accumulate over a semester. Parking is another one that we kind of see sometimes. So just make sure that you're monitoring all of that activity so that you're informed and know what to expect month after month. So I think those would be the biggest things that I would advise families as you're about to embark on this wonderful new chapter in your child's life.
Andrea, thank you so much again. Families, we hope you were able to learn some really valuable information this evening and some great opportunities to talk to your students about. As a reminder, this webinar recording will be shared at families.wustl.edu next week. Stay tuned for our next webinar, a conversation about move-in day and bare beginnings, occurring on Wednesday, August 11th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You will be able to register for this webinar at the families.wustl.edu website. We'll see you then.